At 3:47 p.m., Officer Grayson noticed Jallen King walking alone in a white neighborhood, seen as suspicious solely due to his race. The subsequent stop conducted by Grayson was a clear case of harassment. However, Grayson's ridicule turned serious when Jallen mentioned his father's military background. This mocking reaction would turn out to be Grayson's critical error. Unaware of the boy's resolute demeanor, a reflection of his father's teachings on facing adversity with grace, Grayson failed to recognize the gravity of the situation. Days later, as security footage caught black SUVs circling the area, and Grayson delved into restricted documents revealing only censored alerts, the true scheme was already unfolding. Isaiah King's return was imminent, signaling a drastic change in Oakage Heights. Before we continue, I would like to know your current location, and if you are enjoying these narratives, ensure you are subscribed as tomorrow's episode promises to be exceptional. Under the afternoon sun, Jallen King walked home from school, his headphones drowning out the world. At 16, Jallen had perfected the skill of blending into his surroundings like a shadow, unseen but present. Yet, in Oakage Heights, where the King family resided for 10 years, anonymity was not always achievable, especially for Jallen. Passing Mrs. Whitaker's house, Jallen pretended not to notice her surveillance, as the elderly lady always monitored his movements from behind her curtains. Isaiah King once advised him to maintain a high guard along with keeping his head up, saying, "Some people will always judge you based on appearances first." Approaching the corner store next, Jallen often frequented it for snacks or drinks after basketball practice, yet Mr. Peterson's suspicious and unwavering stare through the window made him feel scrutinized. Familiar with the feeling, Jallen turned up his music to block out the discomfort as he headed home. Suddenly, a police cruiser pulled up beside him, matching his pace, causing Jallen to feel uneasy. Officer Grayson, with a stern expression, rolled down the window and asked him to stop. Remembering his father's advice to remain polite and calm, Jallen complied, though his anxiety was palpable. Officer Bradley Grayson, a new addition to the Oakage Heights Police Department at 32, exuded confidence from his military background, concealing the fact that he had not completed his training. Inquiring about Jallen's presence in the neighborhood, Grayson scrutinized him, demanding an explanation as Jallen calmly stated that he was walking home. At school, Jallen hesitated when asked for his ID as he explained that he was 16 and did not have a driver's license, only his school ID. Grayson told him to keep his hands visible as he reached for his backpack. Observing this, Grayson instinctively moved towards his holster. Jallen stood frozen with his hands in front of him, stating that his school ID was in his backpack. Grayson got out of the vehicle and approached Jallen, who was standing on the sidewalk. Onlookers in the neighborhood observed the interaction with the new officer and the black teenager. Grayson instructed Jallen to empty his bag, which he did carefully, revealing only books, school supplies, a water bottle, and basketball shoes. Seeing no weapons or drugs, Grayson persisted by asking for Jallen's address on Cedar Street and inquiring about his parents. When Jallen mentioned his father's absence due to work in the Special Forces, Grayson's demeanor changed, but Jallen remained composed, recalling his father's advice. With a wide grin, he suddenly burst into laughter, his loud voice echoing down the quiet suburban street. "Special Forces," he repeated, loud enough for the gathering onlookers to hear. "Your daddy's G.I. Joe, huh? That's rich, kid." Jallen stood silently, his expression giving away none of the anger or humiliation he felt inside. "Hey, Miller," Grayson called to another officer who had arrived in a second cruiser. "This kid claims his daddy's in the Special Forces. Maybe he works with Chuck Norris." Officer Miller chuckled uncomfortably, glancing at the growing crowd of witnesses. Unnoticed by the officers, a girl about Jallen's age, Maya Thompson, stood partially hidden behind a tree across the street. She recorded the encounter on her phone, hesitating several times before deciding to continue filming. "Listen, G.I. Joe Jr., Grayson said, stepping closer to Jallen. "Next time you want to make up stories, pick something more believable. I was in the military. I know what real soldiers look like." Jallen remained quiet, his gaze steady but non-confrontational. He knew it was best not to engage with a provoking cop. "Pack up your things and move along," Grayson finally said, appearing bored with the lack of reaction. "And stay out of trouble." Jallen carefully repacked his bag, aware of the eyes watching him. He put his headphones back on, even though he didn't turn the music on. As he walked away, he could still hear Grayson's voice behind him, muttering about special forces. "My ass," the officer said to Miller. "Bet his dad's special forces on the couch. Probably never even met the kid." Jallen continued to walk, his steps deliberate and composed despite the turmoil inside him. Without turning back or showing any emotion, Grayson made his way back to his cruiser after the officer's piercing words. Pausing for a moment, he inquired of Miller about a mysterious individual living in the neighborhood rumored to have military connections. Miller seemed indifferent and casually dismissed Grayson's request, but Grayson remained fixated on uncovering the truth. As Jallen's composed demeanor lingered in his mind, Grayson felt an unsettling need to delve deeper into the matter, despite his own reluctance to admit it. Meanwhile, Maya Thompson discreetly stowed away a recording on her phone, sensing its potential significance. With a newfound determination, Grayson embarked on a mission to unravel the mystery surrounding Isaiah King. Jallen quietly entered the unassuming King household on Cedar Street, distinct from the ostentatious residences in Oakage Heights, but upheld by Angela King's tender care. Upon arriving home, Jallen savored the comforting scents and ambiance that enveloped him, immersing himself in the familiar essence of lemon polish, jasmine candles, and the family's shared meals. The living room's walls bore witness to cherished family memories through carefully displayed photographs, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere. At Jallen's middle school graduation, Jallen was a toddler playing in the backyard, and the family of three, mother, father, and son, spent time at the beach squinting into the sun 5 years ago. Surprisingly, there were no pictures of Isaiah in his military uniform, indicating a deliberate choice. Jallen decided to grab an apple from the fruit bowl in the kitchen, recalling the encounter with Officer Grayson as he took a crispy bite, filling the quiet house with sound. A memory emerged of Jallen at 8 years old, learning special knots from his father in the backyard, questioning the relevance since they rarely went camping. Isaiah had explained the importance of hidden skills and being able to adapt as needed, advice that Jallen now understood better at 16. As he pondered these thoughts, the sound of keys interrupted him as Angela King, dressed in business attire after a long day at the hospital, greeted him upon entering. Despite his automatic response that school was fine, Angela could sense something was amiss and probed gently. Jallen realized he couldn't evade his mother's intuition and confessed that something had indeed happened at school, a fact Angela already knew without asking, as she always saw through her son. Angela's casual demeanor stiffened instantly when she got stopped by a cop on her way home, replaced by alert concern. The officer asked the usual questions and checked her backpack, but he didn't give a reason for stopping her. Angela's jaw tightened when asked if the officer gave his name or badge number. She remembered the officer's name was Grayson, thinking he was new, and stored the information away. The conversation shifted when the officer inquired about her dad. Angela subtly reacted, narrowing her eyes and straightening her posture. She had instructed Jallen not to disclose details about his father's special forces background, but Jallen felt compelled to defend his dad from the officer's assumptions. Understanding her son's intention but emphasizing the importance of privacy and safety, Angela advised him to be cautious. She reminded Jallen not to disclose information about his father's work, especially to strangers like the police. Despite his confusion about the need for secrecy regarding his father's legitimate job, Jallen agreed to follow his mother's advice to provide a vague response about his dad's job if asked again. Later that night, as Jallen worked on his history paper, his phone buzzed with a text message. Maya Thompson and Jallen weren't particularly close friends. They were more like acquaintances who shared a few classes. Maya's message was straightforward, telling Jallen that she needed to talk to him the next day after school. Upon receiving the message, Jallen pondered how Maya had found out about his encounter with Grayson. He replied with a brief "okay" and put his phone down, feeling uneasy settling over him like a fog. The following morning at school, Maya approached Jallen before the first period, pulling him aside near the band room where a small group of students gathered. "I saw what happened yesterday," Maya stated without beating around the bush. "With that cop?" Jallen's face remained impassive, acknowledging that it was indeed a troubling situation. She paused briefly before mentioning, "I recorded some of it." Jallen's eyes widened slightly in surprise. "Why would you do that?" he asked. "Because it wasn't right," Maya responded, adjusting her glasses. "My dad is a civil rights attorney, and he always says to document everything." Jallen took a moment to absorb this revelation before inquiring, "What are you going to do with it?" Maya reassured him by saying she wouldn't do anything without his consent. Curious about her father, Jallen decided to be honest and confirmed. "Yes." Maya studied his face briefly and then simply stated, "Cool. Just wanted to know." Their conversation was interrupted by the warning bell, but as Jallen made his way to first period, Maya's question lingered in his mind. The news of Jallen's confrontation with Officer Grayson had spread quickly throughout Oakage High. By lunchtime, people seemed to be aware of the incident. As Jallen sat alone at his usual table, Tyler Wilson and his friends approached him, with Tyler addressing him as King, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "I overheard you mentioning to Grayson that your dad is similar to Rambo or something like that." Jallen kept munching on his sandwich without lifting his gaze. "My dad says your dad works at Burger Force, not Special Forces," Tyler added, amused by his friend's chuckling. "Your dad brings up my family at dinner, which is weird," Tyler continued, egged on by the laughter. Jallen responded calmly, still focused on his food. "Cool." And Tyler dismissed the conversation, accusing Jallen of lying. Jallen finally looked up, his deep eyes meeting Tyler's without a word, but something in his unwavering stare made Tyler feel uneasy. "Come on, guys," Tyler muttered, retreating to their usual table with his friends. Maya joined Jallen at the table, comforting him. "Ignore them. Tyler's dad is actually that real estate agent who got caught making racist comments online last year." Jalen's mouth twitched slightly, possibly a smile forming. "You seem to have a lot of knowledge about everyone's parents," Maya remarked casually. Shrugging, Mia explained, "My mom works at the courthouse, so I hear things." They sat in content silence for a while before Mia expressed interest in Jalen's dad's Special Forces background, but he declined to discuss it. Mia respected his privacy, agreeing not to push the topic further but offering her help if needed. Meanwhile, Officer Grayson in another part of town embarked on his new mission for his shift. He had spent the previous night scouring social media for information on the King family. Angela King's Facebook profile was basic, with sparse posts and no pictures of her husband. Surprisingly, Jallen seemed to have no presence on social media, which was uncommon for a teenager. Grayson began his patrol in the Cedar Street area, passing by the King residence, which appeared ordinary and quiet, showing no signs of a Special Forces member residing there. He parked his car a block away and approached an elderly woman who was tending to her garden. "Good morning, ma'am," he greeted her with a charming smile. "I'm Officer Grayson. I'm just checking in on the neighborhood. How long have you lived here?" "Almost 30 years, she proudly replied. "You must be familiar with your neighbors, like the Kings at 1742. What can you tell me about them?" Straightening up and wiping dirt from her hands, the woman, Martha Jenkins, shared, "Angela is lovely. She works at the hospital. Jallen, the boy, is quiet but always polite. He often offers to shovel my walkway in the winter. And Mr. King, Isaiah, he's away a lot. I think he's in the military. Angela doesn't talk about it much. They're a private family." "Military, huh? Do you know which branch or what he does?" Martha shook her head. "As I mentioned, they're quite private. Isaiah comes and goes, sometimes home for months and then gone for just as long. He's a nice man, though. He fixed my porch steps last spring when he was home." Grayson acknowledged her information, saying, "Thank you for your time, ma'am. I'm just trying to get acquainted with the community." As he conducted more inquiries throughout the day, the same pattern emerged. Neighbors knew the Kings but had little information about Isaiah. He was seldom seen, known to be always working away, yet his exact occupation remained a mystery. That evening, Grayson sat in his patrol car outside the King residence, observing the house from a distance. The lights were on, and he glimpsed what seemed to be the kitchen through the window, spotting Angela and occasionally Jallen passing by. There was no sight of a third family member. His radio crackled. "Unit 4, what's your location on Cedar Street?" "Just about done with my patrol," he responded. "Copy that. Your shift's almost over. Head in for debrief." Starting the engine, Grayson prepared to head back to the station. Before driving away, he took one final glance at the King house, still troubled by the boy's assertion. The idea of special forces living there seemed unlikely, but no one in the neighborhood could either confirm or deny it, adding to his curiosity. Later that night, Angela King's phone rang shortly after midnight, startling her in the darkness. The caller ID displayed an unknown number, causing her to hesitate before answering with a tentative hello. There was only silence on the other end, no breathing or background noise, just an eerie emptiness. Trying again with a firmer tone, Angela was met with continued silence before the line went dead. This marked the third such call that week, prompting Angela to ensure her bedroom door was closed before retrieving her secure phone hidden in the nightstand. After exchanging a cryptic text with a contact saved as I, Angela deleted the messages, stashed the phone away, and attempted to calm her racing mind to get some sleep. The following day, Officer Grayson sat at his desk in the police station with a cup of coffee, reviewing database records. While he found routine details about Angela King's background, he encountered difficulties in obtaining information about Isaiah King. Despite confirming Isaiah's existence and his relationship with Angela, including joint property ownership and fatherhood to Jallen, Grayson faced obstacles accessing Isaiah's military records due to classified clearance requirements. Frustrated, Grayson muttered to himself, "What the heck?" Sergeant Wallace inquired as he passed by Grayson's desk, prompting Grayson to swiftly change screens, stating, "No, sir, just conducting research." After Wallace left, Grayson resumed, browsing the database. The classified designation for Isaiah could indicate various roles such as a military contractor or intelligence analyst that require security clearance. While it didn't definitively confirm special forces, it left Grayson feeling uneasy. He had previously dismissed Jallen's claims about the supposedly special forces-trained Isaiah, but now he had doubts. That evening, Grayson drove back to Cedar Street in his black Dodge Charger with tinted windows, parking discreetly close to the King residence. He waited until past 11 p.m. for the lights in the house to go out before approaching cautiously. Moving stealthily and blending into the shadows, Grayson aimed to closely observe the property, checking for any signs of Isaiah King's presence. Unbeknownst to Grayson, he was under surveillance by a figure 3 houses down, who observed his every move with specialized equipment. The figure promptly reported Grayson's unauthorized surveillance to a secure phone, confirming his identity as Officer Bradley Grayson. After Grayson left the scene, the figure continued monitoring, watching as Grayson inspected the King residence before eventually departing in his vehicle. A final message indicated that there was activity near the home of the King family and suggested escalating the security protocol. The response to this message was prompt but brief. Grayson was driving home when he received this update and was content with his surveillance efforts, even though he didn't gather much information. Unbeknownst to him, his actions had triggered a reaction that extended beyond the peaceful Oakage Heights neighborhood. The name Isaiah King was now being discussed in high-security facilities accessible to only a select few. Grayson had unknowingly entered into a much larger and more ominous situation. As dawn broke over Oakage Heights, Officer Bradley Grayson, stationed in his patrol car near the King residence since 5 a.m., was running on little sleep, sustained by a mix of coffee and determination. The house of the Kings remained still, with closed curtains and no signs of activity. Although Grayson's shift had officially ended an hour ago, he continued his vigil, aware that his actions were straying from protocol but unable to shake the suspicion that Jallen King's statements about his father held more weight than a typical teenager's defense mechanism. When Angela drove off to work, Grayson observed Jallen leaving for school, ensuring that the coast was clear. With the house empty, Grayson discreetly made his way to the back of the property, concealed by the neighboring trees. The King's backyard was modest, yet well kept, featuring a small locked shed near the rear fence. Grayson cautiously checked his surroundings before attempting to open the shed. With a tool from his pocket, Grayson easily unlocked the basic lock and gently pushed the door open to reveal an orderly shed. Garden tools hung neatly on hooks, a lawnmower sat in the corner, and shelves held various household supplies. Initially finding nothing suspicious or unusual, Grayson's disappointment faded as he noticed a box behind some terracotta pots on the highest shelf. Stretching up, he cautiously retrieved the old dented metal box secured with a small padlock. After considering his options, Grayson decided to take photos of the box instead of breaking the lock. When returning the box, it slipped from his grasp, revealing that it was unlocked all along. Inside, he found foreign currency, a coded notebook, and a photo of Isaiah King in a desert camouflage uniform with 3 other men. Though the faces were partially shadowed, Isaiah's clear and intense gaze made Grayson uneasy. With no insignia or identifying marks visible, Grayson quickly photographed the contents and carefully placed them back before locking the shed door. Sitting inside his car, Grayson examined the photographs closely, focusing on Isaiah's face. There was a certain hardness and knowing gaze in Isaiah's eyes that unsettled him, almost as if the stare was piercing through the camera to anyone who would see the picture in the future. "Who is the real Isaiah King?" Grayson muttered to himself. Later that morning, Angela King burst into the police station, her hospital identification still hanging around her neck. Her usual composed demeanor was replaced by barely contained anger as she approached the front desk. "I need to report an incident," she declared, her tone controlled yet firm. Officer Jenkins looked up, inquiring about the issue. "Someone broke into my shed this morning. I have footage from my security camera capturing the intruder," she said, placing her phone on the counter, displaying a clear image of Grayson picking the lock, an officer recognized by Jenkins on the screen. "I must alert the sergeant. I know exactly who that person is," Angela continued, mentioning Officer Bradley Grayson, who had been troubling her son and prying into her family matters in the neighborhood. Sergeant Wallace, attracted by the uproar, emerged from his office to address the situation. "What is the matter here?" Angela reiterated her complaint, presenting the security footage to him. Wallace's expression darkened as he watched. "Mrs. King, rest assured we take this matter seriously. Please come to my office to give your formal statement." An hour later, Angela left the station with a copy of her complaint and a case number. Sergeant Wallace assured her of a thorough investigation, although she noticed a change in his demeanor when she mentioned Isaiah's name. Perhaps she detected recognition or caution in his eyes. That evening, Angela recounted the events. Jallen's phone buzzed with a text notification, and as she checked it, a frown appeared on her face. "What's wrong?" Jallen inquired. "Just work," she quickly replied, though the message stating a complaint had been filed and flagged required no signature or explanation. Angela promptly deleted it. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Maya Thompson sat at her computer, her fingers moving swiftly over the keyboard. Initially sparked by curiosity about Jallen's father, her investigation had evolved into a deep dive into military forums and declassified mission reports. Maya's adeptness with computers, unbeknownst to many adults, enabled her to navigate through archived news articles, public military records, and specialized forums where veterans exchanged sanitized versions of their experiences. After days of diligent searching, she stumbled upon a brief reference in a redacted mission report indicating that an extraction team led by someone named King had successfully retrieved an asset amidst intense opposition. In a forum post by a retired Marine, there was mention of the seriousness of Operation Silencer, a highly classified unit in recent military history with much of its activities still heavily redacted even decades later. Processing this newfound information, Maya considered the possibility that King could be Jallen's father, given the matching timeline and the unit's secrecy that aligned with the family's penchant for privacy. As Maya leaned back in her chair, contemplating this revelation, her father entered her room and inquired about her late-night activities, suspecting her research might revolve around the King boy and the mentioned officer. Maya paused uncertainly, causing James to let out a sigh. "Maya, I understand your desire to assist, but if your suspicions about the father are true, you should approach this matter cautiously. These are risky waters to navigate without proper protection," he advised. Perplexed, Maya inquired, "What do you mean?" James advised her to urge Angela King to contact him directly for legal assistance if needed, but otherwise advised her to steer clear of the situation. After her father departed, Maya reopened her browser and stumbled upon another discovery, a heavily censored mission report bearing a visible signature line referencing King Operations Silencer Unit 8. While not conclusive evidence, it strengthened her belief in Jallen's truthfulness. Subsequent days brought an eerie calm to Oak Heights. Grayson had been temporarily reassigned to desk duties following Angela's complaint, and Jallen commuted to school without trouble. However, subtle changes in the neighborhood began to surface. Mysterious black SUVs with tinted windows loitered at night, unmarked vehicles appeared at odd hours, and rumors circulated about unsettling occurrences in the usually tranquil suburb. One evening at Thompson's Corner Market, Jallen encountered Grayson, now in civilian attire, purchasing cigarettes at the counter. Their eyes met in the store mirror, and Grayson, with a smile devoid of warmth, remarked, "Well, if it isn't G.I. Joe's boy," loud enough for other customers to hear. Unfazed, Jallen maintained eye contact as he paid for his drink, prompting Grayson to inch closer and mention, "You know, I looked into your father. Quite fascinating details." Jallen maintained a neutral expression as his heart rate quickened when he paid for his drink and prepared to leave. Grayson's voice toughened as he stated, "I'm not done talking to you." Jallen calmly responded, "But I'm done listening," echoing his father's serene gaze that revealed nothing while observing everything. Something about that look unsettled Grayson, feeling too similar to a photograph he had found before, showing the same unwavering confidence and unspoken strength. Inching closer, Grayson intruded on Jallen's personal space, emphasizing, "You think you're tough because your daddy taught you some tricks." Jallen stood his ground without flinching or retreating, calmly stating, "Are we finished here, sir? I need to head home." Grayson's attempts to provoke a reaction from Jallen were unsuccessful, leaving him frustrated, desiring to witness the boy lose his composure. Despite the public embarrassment, Jallen maintained his dignity intact. The store owner, Mr. Thompson, cleared his throat loudly, inquiring if everything was all right. Grayson muttered that everything was fine, backing away and claiming he was just conversing with a local troublemaker. Stepping out of the store, Jallen could feel Grayson's gaze piercing into his back. Once outside, he took a deep breath, recalling his father's advice to control the things you can control. Your reactions are yours alone. The following day, while playing basketball with friends at the public court, police cruisers arrived with flashing lights. Officer Grayson, accompanied by two other officers, strode onto the court, calling out for Jallen King to accompany them. The game halted as everyone turned to observe the situation. Holding a basketball, Jallen inquired, "What for?" Grayson explained that a disturbance had been reported. "Eyewitnesses observed your involvement in the disturbance. I have been present here for the last hour." Grayson came up to you with handcuffs ready, urging you not to complicate things further. Jallen's friends defended him, claiming he did nothing wrong and that they were all together. Grayson disregarded their statements. This had become personal. It was now a display of authority, an attempt to assert dominance over Jallen. "Face the other way and place your hands behind your back," Grayson instructed. Jallen complied, understanding that resisting would only worsen the situation. Feeling the cold metal around his wrists, he recalled his father's advice to stay calm in challenging circumstances. Maya, from across the street, watched and recorded the events on her phone, live streaming to her private social media. Her father, James Thompson, wasted no time in informing his colleagues as the police car carrying Jallen drove off. Jallen found himself alone in a holding room at the station, not an interrogation room yet. Although not formally charged, Grayson's intentions were evident. He wanted Jallen to feel the pressure. Angela stormed into the station, demanding to know the whereabouts of her son. The desk sergeant informed her that Officer Grayson had brought Jallen in from the basketball court. Angela insisted on seeing her son immediately, frustrated by the delay. However, she was informed that Officer Grayson was currently processing Jallen, the same officer involved in a prior incident on her property. The sergeant, responsible for the case involving the harassment of my son, appeared uneasy when approached by Angela. Despite her threat to contact a lawyer and the media if a supervisor wasn't brought in, the sergeant tried to reassure her of understanding her worry. As Angela persisted in her demand, Grayson and Jallen shared a tense moment in the holding room. Grayson provocatively mentioned the possibility of charging Jallen with assault, pointing out a witness claiming Jallen had pushed someone at the court. However, Jallen maintained his silence. Grayson continued to taunt Jallen about his absent father, questioning his whereabouts. Just as the tension escalated, Grayson excused himself from the room as his phone rang, leaving Jallen alone. In the hallway, Sergeant Wallace confronted Grayson about his inappropriate involvement in the case and informed him of an investigation regarding an incident at the shed. Wallace then proceeded to suspend Grayson and demanded his badge and gun, despite Grayson's protests about possible larger implications surrounding the father in the case. Wallace noticed a subtle change in expression on the man claiming to be Wallace. This made him even more convinced that Grayson should step back and trust him. He warned Grayson that he was in deep waters. A strange calmness took over the police station as the usual noise from radios and phones faded. Officers sitting at their desks subtly straightened up and their eyes turned towards the entrance. A man of average height, dressed in jeans, boots, and a plain gray t-shirt with military-like posture, walked in through the front doors. Although nothing stood out about his appearance, his deliberate movements commanded attention. This man was Isaiah King. Isaiah King navigated through the police station confidently, displaying ease in what seemed like a hostile environment. He maintained a calm demeanor without rushing, raising his voice or making unnecessary gestures. His intense gaze, reminiscent of the unsettling one in Grayson's photo, carefully surveyed the room, capturing every detail. Angela, spotting him first, felt relief wash over her, and their eyes briefly connected before Isaiah approached the front desk. In a deep and composed voice, he stated, "I'm here for my son, Jallen King." The desk sergeant, taken aback for a moment, requested to see some identification. Isaiah slowly retrieved his wallet from his back pocket, revealing a military ID with distinct red markings, sparking astonishment in the sergeant. Respectfully, the sergeant excused himself to get the senior officer. Wallace, still engaged in a discussion with Grayson, paused abruptly as he noticed Isaiah. A flicker of recognition crossed his face as Wallace, who had a military background before joining the police force, recognized the significance of the red markings. Extending his hand, Wallace greeted, "Mr. King, Sergeant Wallace at your service." "Paul Wallace, there appears to have been a misunderstanding involving your son," Isaiah stated. Wallace, maintaining his composure, responded to Isaiah while glancing at Grayson, who was trying to hide his surprise with defiance. Wallace quickly clarified that there was no evidence to support the disturbance claim against his son, and reassured that he would be released immediately without any charges. Isaiah, asserting his authority, expressed his desire to see his son right away, leading the way towards the holding area. Grayson attempted to intervene, mentioning that they were still in the processing stage, but Wallace reminded him of his suspension. Isaiah then turned his attention fully to Grayson for the first time, making the officer uncomfortable with his penetrating gaze. Isaiah casually mentioned Grayson's inquiries about him, causing Grayson to feel uneasy. Isaiah handed Wallace a formal request for all records of Grayson's interactions with his family, emphasizing that the request had been properly filed. Wallace, taken aback by the official document, agreed to cooperate. Isaiah proceeded towards the holding room, leaving Grayson bewildered and angry. Jallen, anticipating a different confrontation, looked up as the door opened. Instead of encountering Grayson again, his father appeared in the doorway. The 16-year-old momentarily lost his composure as relief, love, and a hint of worry crossed his face before he regained control. "Dad," he uttered simply. Isaiah swiftly crossed the room and placed a hand on his son's shoulder, a gesture more meaningful than a hug. "You okay?" he asked. Jallen nodded and stated, "I'm good. Let's go home." As they exited the holding room, Angela joined them, forming a protective triangle around their son. The Kings navigated through the station as a unified entity, maintaining their dignity and focus. Grayson observed their departure, feeling frustration building inside him. He was not finished as he had been publicly embarrassed, his authority challenged. Something about Isaiah King raised alarm bells in Grayson's mind. He believed the man was dangerous. After relinquishing his badge and gun, Grayson sat in his car at the station's parking lot, gripping the steering wheel tightly until his knuckles whitened. Despite his suspension, which restricted his access to police resources, he still had connections and favors he could utilize. Meanwhile, while the King family reunited at their kitchen table for a long-awaited meal, Grayson was engrossed in his home computer, typing rapidly. Through several calls and the promise of future favors, he acquired what he sought: access to a classified database. Isaiah King's name led to a file with most of the information redacted, but it revealed enough. Grayson discovered discrepancies in his service record, including deployments to unfamiliar locations during unconventional periods, which were not aligned with known operations. Finally, on the top of the screen, the word "active" blinked. Grayson, a classified operative who was not retired but still active, leaned back and ran his hands through his hair. He was puzzled by what he had gotten himself into. The main question on his mind was why an active classified operative was residing in a suburban neighborhood in Oakage Heights at the King residence. After Jallen had gone to bed, Isaiah and Angela were in the living room, speaking quietly. "How serious is the situation?" Angela inquired. "It's under control," Isaiah responded, "for now. However, Grayson is unpredictable and dangerous in his ignorance. He trespassed into our shed." "Did he discover your box?" Isaiah nodded. "I believe it was a test. The lock was intentionally left open, and there was nothing significant inside. The photo was just enough to pique his curiosity without disclosing anything specific." Angela shook her head, a slight smile forming. "You were testing him even then. I needed to understand the type of man we are up against, and now I do. The worst kind. Someone with a wounded ego and a point to prove." Isaiah's demeanor hardened slightly. "He will persist. He has already breached restricted databases." Angela's eyes widened. "How did you find out?" "I was immediately alerted when it happened. It's standard protocol." "What is our next step?" Isaiah paused. "We observe and wait to see his next move. The team is ready, and he is under surveillance. And as for Jallen, he was apprehended today in front of his friends due to this man's grudge." "Officer Grayson will soon realize his error," Angela stated quietly. Although Isaiah's voice remained composed, there was a hint of something that would have sent shivers down Grayson's spine. "You have entered into a much larger and darker world than you realize." Meanwhile, as Grayson left his house late at night to go to a bar to drown his frustration and devise his next plan, unnoticed by him, a car was parked 2 blocks away. Unaware of the high-powered optics tracking his every move, he failed to hear the soft voice transmitting through a secure communication device. Through the scope, crosshairs briefly centered on Grayson's chest before shifting away. The observer quietly remarked, He's stirred up trouble with the wrong person. Lowering the device, the observer mused that he was clueless about the imminent danger. Moving with a distinct purpose, a nondescript truck rolled slowly along the outskirts of Oakage Heights with its headlights off. Isaiah King parked at the town's edge underneath the cover of an old oak tree slightly past midnight. Remaining still for several minutes, he meticulously scanned the area, adhering to his ingrained protocol of checking for any anomalies or signs of surveillance due to his history of operations in life-threatening environments. Although now in a serene American suburb, Isaiah's instincts were as sharp as ever, particularly tonight. Having arrived earlier than expected due to Jallen's sudden arrest, Isaiah had to abbreviate his overseas mission to safeguard his family. Ascertaining the area's security, Isaiah left the truck and navigated discreetly through backyards and side streets, steering clear of main roads and surveillance cameras. Years ago, upon moving to Oakage Heights, he had meticulously mapped out every approach to his home, familiar with every blind spot, vantage point, and escape route not out of paranoia, but due to his meticulous nature. Pausing momentarily at Mrs. Jenkins's garden, Isaiah recalled her previous conversation with him. Officer Grayson spoke about their family's interaction with the elderly woman, emphasizing how she had always been kind to them. However, the officer highlighted the lack of awareness people had regarding the potential risks of casual conversations. The King house appeared dark, with only a dim light shining in the kitchen. Isaiah quietly entered through a side door using a key that few were aware of, skillfully avoiding creaking floorboards as he moved through the house. In the kitchen, Angela awaited him, holding a cup of tea that had gone cold. She greeted him calmly, having grown accustomed to his silent arrivals after 16 years of marriage to a secretive man. They exchanged a brief embrace, and then Isaiah revealed that he had to leave the mission due to unexpected circumstances. Angela noticed signs of fatigue and tension on his face, indicating the seriousness of the situation. Isaiah explained that he had to pass on the mission to others, as news of an incident at home had reached him. Despite plans to contain the situation, Isaiah anticipated inquiries and suspicions arising from his abrupt departure. Angela reassured him that their son had been unjustly targeted and arrested. Isaiah acknowledged the gravity of the situation and hinted at taking action against Officer Grayson. As they sat together, a sense of quiet understanding enveloped them. Amidst the bittersweet atmosphere that marked their reunion, Angela eventually remarked, "He's different from when you last saw him growing up so quickly." Isaiah, with quiet pride, noted, "He handled the situation well, remaining composed and not escalating, just like his father." This time, Isaiah's smile was genuine as he mentioned, "I'll go see him. He'll be happy you're home." Angela squeezed his hand and added, "Even considering the circumstances." Isaiah silently ascended the stairs and paused outside Jallen's door, listening to his son's steady breathing. Upon quietly entering, he observed Jallen peacefully asleep with one arm resting over his face, struck by how rapidly children mature. Despite work often keeping him away, leaving gaps in his son's life, Jallen had grown into a young man any father would be proud of, possessing dignity and control. Sensing his father's presence, Jallen stirred, opening his eyes as he recognized Isaiah at the door. Greeting him with a quick, "Dad," Jallen sat up as Isaiah moved closer, apologizing for waking him. In the dim light, Jallen studied his father's face, noticing new lines and a fresh scar, yet feeling Isaiah's enduring solidity and reliability. Expressing surprise at his early return, Jallen mentioned his recent troubles with a hint of embarrassment. Isaiah reassured him, "You did nothing wrong," as Jallen confessed about mentioning his father's military background to a police officer. "Mom always said that," Isaiah intervened firmly, emphasizing that the officer's actions were targeted towards him. Jallen nodded in understanding as his father expressed the importance of who a person is rather than what they say. Despite his father's warnings, Jallen continued to probe about Isaiah, leading to consequences for his actions. Isaiah calmly reassured his father that he could handle any trouble that may arise. Over the course of almost an hour, father and son engaged in deep conversation, reconnecting after being apart for months. Isaiah shared wisdom about patience, legacy, and the necessity of facing injustice with discipline. He emphasized the idea that the toughest battles are those waged with restraint rather than fury, passing on this insight from one generation to the next. Before Jallen drifted off to sleep, Isaiah casually inquired about Officer Grayson, seeking more information. The following morning, while Jallen was at school, Isaiah left the house early and drove to an old diner on the outskirts of town. Inside, he was greeted by 3 elderly black men who knew him well. They exchanged greetings filled with recognition and respect, acknowledging Isaiah's return to their community. The men who had observed Isaiah's growth and transformation over the years were revered figures whose influence extended far beyond what most realized. As they sipped coffee and played dominoes, they discussed Jallen's recent encounter with the troublesome Officer Grayson. Isaiah acknowledged the officer's concerning behavior, indicating that Grayson seemed overly interested in him. The third man in the family, Reverend Thomas Baker, diligently studied the book of Isaiah. "You're not here just to chat, son. What can we help you with?" Isaiah always admired the Reverend's straightforwardness. "Grayson has been suspended, but that won't hinder him. I need to be informed if he takes any actions." The 3 men shared a glance, a silent understanding built over years of friendship. "Consider it handled," Walter finally spoke. "We will discreetly spread the word. Thank you," Isaiah said gratefully, taking a sip of his coffee. "And the town's reaction?" "It's a mixed bag," Reverend Baker honestly responded. "Some were upset with how your son was treated. Others—" He trailed off with a shrug. "Some things remain the same," noted Isaiah. "But some things change," James added. "When you left 20 years ago, a black family couldn't reside in Oakage Heights. Now your son walks those streets, not without challenges, but possible." Isaiah nodded in acknowledgement, recognizing the truth in James's words. "Progress may be slow, but it happens," Reverend Baker agreed. "Now, fill us in on this special operation," he continued. "I knew you were up to something serious, but you never shared the details," Isaiah smiled. "And I still won't," he replied. "But I promise we'll talk about it properly once it's over." As Isaiah left the diner, he felt a familiar sense of comfort reconnecting with the men who had influenced him. He had returned to Oakage Heights as a restless teenager, dissatisfied with its barriers and biases. While he visited sporadically over the years, always briefly and somewhat hidden, few knew he had been quietly watching over his hometown all this time. Meanwhile, Officer Bradley Grayson sat in his apartment, surrounded by papers, notes, and empty coffee cups. His suspension only fueled his determination. The embarrassment of losing his badge and gun in front of everyone had ignited his obsession. Despite experiencing a burning sensation in his stomach, King's identity intrigued Grayson. He felt he was on the cusp of a major discovery after viewing a fragment of a file that suggested Isaiah King was not merely a former military man with an attitude, but an actively involved individual with classified connections to operations, so secretive that Grayson could not locate any information about such operatives through official means. Puzzled, Grayson wondered aloud why someone like King would choose to live in an inconspicuous place if he was indeed a highly skilled government asset. This question had preoccupied him for days. Grayson's current hypothesis was that King might be engaged in illicit activities under the guise of his classified status, the most plausible explanation that aligned with Grayson's mistrustful nature. He dialed a number he had previously contacted, hoping for answers from the Daily Tribune. However, the exhausted response he received indicated that the reporter was unable to entertain Grayson's unsubstantiated claims, especially considering his suspension for bothering King's family. Despite being told to drop the matter to avoid further repercussions, Grayson remained convinced of a hidden truth about King and took matters into his own hands by using a disposable phone to make a secretive call to an unnamed individual. Grayson, who had occasionally utilized a service to investigate suspects, immediately requested detailed information on Isaiah King without any introduction. The voice on the other end was warned that obtaining this data might come at a cost. Grayson brusquely insisted on proceeding despite the potential complications, also instructing to compile a file on his son, Jallen King. After ending the call, Grayson formulated a new strategy to gather evidence to publicly expose Isaiah King as a total fraud, specifically targeting his son, who was a member of the Special Forces. With a bitter smile, Grayson was determined to prove his theory. While Grayson was strategizing, Maya Thompson was conducting her own inquiry into the matter. She had meticulously edited and shared a video of Jallen's arrest, sparking widespread outrage among their peers. As discussions erupted in local community platforms, some supported the police while others decried the apparent targeting of a young black man. Surprisingly, military forums began to buzz with enigmatic comments, one of which caught Maya's attention. A verified account belonging to a retired Army colonel hinted at the involvement of Isaiah King in the unfolding events, mentioning that Officer Grayson was unaware of the situation he had entered. As the online controversy intensified, Isaiah decided to visit the police station to introduce himself to the department leadership without making any threats or demands. Chief Williams nervously welcomed him to his office, where Isaiah assured him that Officer Grayson's actions were not justified. Isaiah responded to the chief's discomfort by mentioning that individual officers can make their own choices, but it's how those choices are dealt with that reflects an organization's values or policies. The investigation into the shed incident is still ongoing, and Officer Grayson remains suspended until its completion. Chief Williams addressed his concern about his son's arrest, stating that they are reviewing the circumstances as it seems to have been a misunderstanding. When Isaiah questioned if this was what they call racial profiling and false arrest in Oak Ridge Heights, the chief had no adequate response. After giving Chief Williams his contact card, which only had a name and number on it, Isaiah left. Chief Williams, feeling unsettled from a previous conversation with someone from the Pentagon, pondered the implications of Isaiah King's identity and service record. Meanwhile, Officer Grayson and 4 other off-duty officers, who shared his suspicions and resentments, were outside the King residence gathering intelligence without official authorization, emphasizing the need to document findings without confrontation. Unauthorized, the team adjusted their tactical gear borrowed from the department, all carrying sidearms for protection despite Grayson's reassurance. The target's dark house seemed empty, with intel indicating they were at a school event until 9. Grayson thought they had about an hour to proceed. Unbeknownst to him, the intel was false, deliberately orchestrated by Isaiah, who had anticipated their move. Hidden cameras captured the team's movements as they crossed the lawn towards the house. Isaiah, monitoring from a remote location, viewed the feed on a laptop, muttering that everything was going as planned. Grayson picked the lock, initiating the unauthorized raid. The team meticulously searched the house, finding nothing incriminating after 20 minutes. Despite Grayson's insistence to keep looking, they only uncovered normal family possessions. Unnoticed by the team, Isaiah had discreetly placed devices on their vehicles, preventing them from starting as they prepared to leave. As panic set in, the officers realized they were stranded, their cars disabled by Isaiah's warning. In the aftermath of their failed home invasion, Grayson came to the realization that they were stuck in tactical gear, stranded due to their error. A sense of dread washed over him as he sensed that their arrival was anticipated. While deliberating their next steps, Isaiah made a strategic phone call not to the authorities, but to a former military colleague working at the Pentagon, asking for a favor, referring to himself as King. As repercussions unfolded the following day, including reprimands, suspensions, and potential legal action, Chief Williams received a stark warning from Washington about the growing public attention on the situation in Oak Ridge Heights. Advised by Isaiah to address the issue promptly to avoid career damage, the chief received a call signaling a potential escalation. Grayson, consumed by shame and seeking to save face, took a bold and impulsive step by attempting to arrest Jallen at the school without proper authorization or evidence. Despite the tense atmosphere in the cafeteria, Jallen remained composed, questioning the basis of the charge concocted by Grayson, who was determined to assert control in a situation slipping out of his grasp. Grayson's mind was now consumed with the belief that the public arrest of Isaiah would compel him to reveal his hidden secrets. Meanwhile, Maya, who was seated nearby, began live streaming the unfolding events at Oak Ridge High School. She calmly narrated the suspension of a police officer attempting to arrest Jallen King without a warrant or valid reason. The video quickly circulated, transitioning from Maya's social media to local news platforms. As Grayson led Jallen away in handcuffs, a group of students and teachers followed in outrage, with the principal trying to intervene. Amid the chaos, Grayson insisted on continuing the arrest, claiming authority as a police officer despite objections from the principal. As Grayson forced Jallen into his vehicle, he believed he was seizing control of the situation to uncover the truth. Within an hour, protesters surrounded the Oak Ridge Heights police station, fueled by Maya's shared video. Isaiah King entered the station calmly but with a clear purpose, prompting discomfort in Chief Williams. Chief Williams assured Isaiah that Grayson's actions were unauthorized and pledged to release his son. Unfazed, Isaiah headed towards the interview rooms before the chief could finish speaking, with a determined and deliberate stride that nobody dared to interrupt. Upon entering the room where Grayson was questioning Jallen, the suspended officer glanced up in surprise and defiance at the perfect timing of Grayson's arrival. A desperate smile appeared on Grayson's face as he expressed his readiness to uncover the truth. Accusingly, Grayson questioned Isaiah about his activities in Oak Ridge Heights, suggesting he was conducting operations under the guise of his family. Without responding to Grayson, Isaiah turned his attention to his son, making sure he was all right, to which Jallen nodded calmly. Presenting legal papers, surveillance footage, and impressive military credentials, Isaiah addressed Grayson in a composed manner, pointing out the federal offenses he had committed by abducting a minor under false pretenses. Grayson's confidence faltered as Isaiah highlighted his unjust persecution of the family due to his refusal to admit his mistakes. Meanwhile, Grayson's superiors were bombarded with calls from various authorities illustrating the gravity of the situation. As uniformed officers arrived to escort Grayson out, he made a final, desperate claim of Isaiah being a clandestine operative, but his words were met with embarrassment and disbelief. Led away while protesting, Grayson's voice echoed through the hallway as Isaiah helped Jallen up, examining the handcuff marks and suggesting they go home. Amidst the station's officers and staff respectfully stepping aside, a crowd of protesters cheered as Jallen emerged. Maya pushed through to reach them, her phone still live streaming. "Jallen, are you okay? What happened in there?" Jallen managed a small smile and responded, "I'm fine. It's over now." Isaiah placed a protective hand on his son's shoulder, guiding him toward their car. The crowd parted before them, offering support and outrage on their behalf. However, to those observant enough, the truth lingered in Jallen's eyes. It wasn't over. Although Grayson had been removed, he remained a threat, unpredictable, desperate, and now entirely unhinged. Later that night, as Grayson sat in a holding cell awaiting charges, he made a decision. If the system wouldn't listen, and no one would believe him about Isaiah King, then he would take matters into his own hands. He needed leverage to force King into the open, to make everyone see the truth. And he knew exactly what that leverage would be. The morning after Jallen's public arrest and release, Officer Bradley Grayson was nowhere to be found. His apartment remained empty, his phone unanswered, and his ankle monitor was found cut off on his kitchen counter. Chief Williams called an emergency meeting with his senior officers, urgently stating, "I want Grayson found now before he does something we'll all regret." However, Grayson had completely disappeared. His personal vehicle was discovered abandoned at a bus station 20 miles outside of town. Utilizing skills from his brief military training, He had gone completely off the grid to evade detection. At the King residence, Isaiah received the news with an unsettling calmness that left the officer who delivered it perturbed. The officer noticed, "You don't appear worried." Isaiah replied, "Not worried, but prepared." Once the officer left, Angela told her husband, "He's coming for us." Isaiah agreed. "Grayson will target Jallen. We should leave town." Angela, showing fear for the first time, suggested leaving until they find him. "We can't run," Isaiah stated firmly, deciding this situation ends now. Jallen stayed home as a precaution, a wise move as a text message arrived from Maya's phone asking for a secret meeting at Crawford Park Trail. Sensing something wrong, Jallen showed the message to his father, who verified Maya was in class. Isaiah secured the house quickly, suspecting Grayson was behind the fake message. "Stay inside with Mom," he instructed Jallen, preparing to act on his plan to end the threat. In a twist unforeseen by their plans, as Angela went to close the curtains in the living room, the sound of shattering glass and the release of gas startled everyone. "Smoke grenades!" Isaiah exclaimed, urging everyone to leave through the back immediately. While the family hurried towards the rear exit, a masked figure burst through the side door, grabbing Jallen in a chokehold. Grayson, muffled by his mask but recognizable, warned them to stay put at gunpoint, instructing them to step back. Despite the chaos, Isaiah remained composed, assessing the situation clearly. Angela stood by, focused on her son. "Officer Grayson," Isaiah spoke calmly, "you are making a grave error that cannot be reversed." Ignoring Isaiah's words, Grayson tightened his hold on Jallen, adamant on revealing the truth. As the smoke thickened, Grayson dragged Jallen towards the door, intending to take him for a private conversation. In a defiant move, Isaiah stepped forward, cautioning Grayson against his actions. Grayson, unmoved, insisted on taking Jallen away alone for their identities to be exposed. With a gun pointed at Jallen, Grayson left swiftly with the boy in tow. Isaiah, after securing Angela's safety, activated a device before taking his next calculated steps. The Blackbird on his wrist compromised. He communicated through it with Priority Alpha tracking active. Angela grabbed his arm and demanded to know what happened. Isaiah's expression was serious but focused. Jalen's watch contains a military-grade undetectable tracker. "The backup teams that were mentioned earlier are already in motion," Isaiah assured Angela. However, he mentioned that he wasn't going to wait for them. In an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, miles away, Grayson forced Jallen into a metal chair and secured his hands with zip ties. Despite his heart racing, the teenager remained composed, recalling his father's advice to observe everything in times of danger for survival. Grayson, visibly agitated, removed his mask, revealing wild eyes and stubble. He paced around Jallen with a gun in hand, questioning if Jalen's father was involved in covert operations against Americans. Jallen, observing the warehouse's layout, stayed silent. Grayson warned Jallen that withholding information wouldn't benefit him and accused Jalen's family of having suspicious surveillance equipment. Despite Grayson's threats, Jallen remained quiet, maintaining eye contact. Enraged by Jalen's stoicism, Grayson demanded him to speak out. Finally, Jallen spoke calmly, stating that his father serves his country by protecting people, which is not a secret. Grayson disagreed, claiming that operatives like Jalen's father eliminate threats and operate covertly. Jallen asked if Grayson was afraid of his father. Grayson's grip on his gun tightened as he proclaimed, "I'm not afraid. I'm simply revealing the truth. People should be aware of the presence of dangerous individuals in their midst," Jallen retorted, his bravery growing. "The only threat here is you. You unlawfully entered our house, arrested me without cause, and now you've abducted me at gunpoint." Just as Grayson was about to respond, his phone buzzed with a message containing only an address, the location of the warehouse. The message was followed by the ominous words, "I'm coming." Grayson's face drained of color as he frantically checked outside for any signs of Isaiah King's imminent arrival, finding nothing. Despite Grayson's trembling hands and attempt to dismiss Isaiah's speed, Jallen hinted at the power of his father. "You clearly underestimate who my father is." Meanwhile, Isaiah silently navigated the industrial area, surveying the warehouse before, making his way towards it with no backup, driven by a father's instinct to protect his child. Inside, Grayson's agitation grew as he prepared for a possible siege from any direction, realizing that his initial plan to expose Isaiah's true nature on camera was falling apart amidst fear setting in. "Your father may think he's above the law, Grayson, with his special forces background, but he's only human. Blood runs in his veins just like everyone else," Jallen whispered defiantly. Suddenly, Isaiah's voice echoed around them, challenging Grayson and demanding the release of his son, causing Grayson to frantically search for the source while urging Jallen's freedom. Remaining composed amidst the tension, a solution remains viable without causing harm to anyone. Accusing Grayson of being a deceiver, he accused him of plotting to harm him, a common tactic employed by individuals of his kind. After a brief silence, a figure emerged from the shadows in the rear of the warehouse. It was Isaiah King, who, with visible hands, slowly made his way into the open space, dressed simply in jeans and a gray t-shirt. In a soft tone, Isaiah assured Grayson that if he intended to harm him, they would not be having this discussion. Facing Isaiah with his gun aimed at his chest, Grayson warned him not to advance or he would shoot. Meeting Jallen's eyes briefly for reassurance, Isaiah challenged Grayson's identity as a police officer, not a killer, although he claimed to know the truth about him. Isaiah continued to approach slowly, trying to convince Grayson not to shoot an unarmed man in the presence of his son. Denying Grayson's accusations of being involved in domestic operations, Isaiah clarified that his role was solely to protect innocent individuals from warlords and terrorists in undisclosed locations. In a display of desperation over reason, Grayson challenged Isaiah to a fight, urging him to show his true colors. Swiftly, Grayson attempted to attack Jallen with his gun, only for Isaiah to intervene with incredible speed and precision. By manipulating Grayson's movements, Isaiah effortlessly neutralized his attacks, exhibiting complete control throughout the encounter. With precise strikes on pressure points, Isaiah disabled Grayson, demonstrating his ability to resolve conflicts with minimal force. As Chief Williams and federal agents arrived on the scene, Isaiah ensured proper authorities witnessed the resolution, showcasing his commitment to resolving conflicts peacefully. Isaiah, accompanied by Jallen, stood tall as they emerged from the warehouse, revealing the reality of the decorated Isaiah King to the gathered news crews. 3 weeks after the warehouse standoff that the local media labeled as such, a veteran undercover agent and, most importantly, a father, began stepping into the spotlight. The Oakage Heights Town Hall was packed exceeding its capacity as residents from diverse backgrounds crowded into the meeting room and spilled into the hallways. Mayor Patricia Davis struggled to maintain order amidst the competing voices. In the past weeks, significant changes had occurred in the once quiet suburb. Grayson faced numerous federal charges ranging from kidnapping to violations of civil rights, leading to an investigation of the police department. Isaiah King, previously a secretive figure, had now become the focal point of a town-wide discourse on race, justice, and security. "Please, everyone," Mayor Davis called out above the noise, "our guest speaker has arrived." The crowd hushed as Isaiah King approached the podium. Dressed simply in a button-down shirt and slacks without any visible military insignia, he exuded authority. "Thank you for being here," Isaiah began, his deep voice resonating across the room. "What happened to my family was not an isolated incident. It shed light on a conversation that many prefer to evade." Pausing to observe the audience, with some showing support and others still hesitant, Isaiah clarified his intentions. "I am not here to assign blame or seek revenge. I am here to discuss progress, to foster a community where my son and all our children can walk home without fear." Over the next half hour, Isaiah spoke not with hostility, but with sagacity. He emphasized the need for accountability within the police force, community oversight, and training to address implicit biases, while acknowledging the nuances of the situation. The majority of officers serving with honor and the genuine security concerns faced by communities. By the end, Isaiah realized that his failure stemmed not from suspicion of an unusual situation, but from allowing that suspicion to develop into prejudice and that prejudice to lead to persecution. He expressed the need for improvement and emphasized the importance of doing better. The audience responded with enthusiastic applause. Even those who had intended to challenge him found themselves in agreement. The unexpected transformation in Oakage Heights ensued rapidly. Chief Williams stepped down, a reform-minded captain took over, new training procedures were introduced, and community oversight boards were established with actual authority to review complaints. Jallen's life also took a different path when he returned to school, being perceived not only as the child with a mysterious father, but also as someone who confronted injustice with grace and resilience. Younger students, particularly boys of color, started seeking his guidance and support. When Jallen confessed to his father one evening about not knowing how to advise them, Isaiah reassured him that honest guidance, not elaborate speeches, is what they require. Dignity, he added, is not taught in classrooms but passed down through generations. Maya Thompson's journalism flourished following the incident. The video she captured of Jallen's arrest was shown in civic classes nationwide, sparking conversations on civil rights, law enforcement, and community duties. Her comprehensive reporting earned her a prestigious scholarship for aspiring journalists. She credited Jallen with giving her the courage to continue filming during challenging moments. Jallen responded to Isaiah, saying, "You always had that courage within you. You just needed a reason to display it." Over the following months, their friendship grew stronger as they shared experiences and respected each other, hinting at a deeper connection down the line. Meanwhile, Isaiah faced his own dilemmas. His cover was blown, his family's safety was compromised, and he received offers to relocate, change identities, and start afresh far away from Oakage Heights. Surprisingly, Isaiah declined all offers and opened a unique training center in town, focusing on leadership, self-defense, and community service for local youth. The King Self-Defense and Leadership Academy quickly became a popular spot for youngsters from diverse backgrounds. Isaiah not only taught physical skills, but also the mental discipline that guided his life, attracting a growing waiting list each month. Unexpectedly, some who had once ignored Jallen were now enrolling their children in Isaiah's classes, showing a desire for redemption. Mrs. Whitaker, who used to watch Jallen suspiciously, even apologized tearfully for her years of silent judgment. Isaiah observed these transformations and remarked to Angela that change may be slow, but it does happen. Meanwhile, Bradley Grayson, confined to a mental health facility after his breakdown, watched Isaiah's positive impact on the community through limited television access, filled with regret for the ruin he brought upon himself in his misguided quest for truth, destroying his career, freedom, and reputation. A man's true nature, as revealed by his son, showed him to be a dedicated soldier who served honorably in Oakage Heights. This incident led to introspection in the community, sparking conversations about bias and privilege. Over time, old barriers started to break down. 2 months after opening his academy, Isaiah was surprised by a visit from James Wilson, an elderly man he had met at a diner. James brought a small box found in his attic, containing a newspaper from 1968 with a headline about breaking the color barrier at Oakage Academy. This young man in the photo was James's brother, who had passed away in Vietnam. James shared words of wisdom about taking the first steps, making the future ones possible. Isaiah understood the significance of the gift and decided to display it to remind his students of the ongoing legacy they were continuing. During dinner with the King family, Jallen shared that he was asked to speak at graduation about resilience and dignity. With pride, Angela asked what his response was, to which Jallen answered he said, "Yes." Remembering his father's advice about real strength, Isaiah looked at his son, now a young man shaped by significant experiences, knowing that whatever path Jallen, chose his foundation would be the quiet strength that had carried him through. Following dinner, Isaiah and Angela faced challenges as his secure phone received a discreet message, which he glanced at before putting it down. Angela noticed his expression and inquired if everything was all right. Isaiah responded that it was just a check-in from old friends ensuring their well-being. The message conveyed a simple yet reassuring sentiment. They were still keeping an eye on them. While this phase of their journey was coming to a close, the world Isaiah operated in continued to exhibit its eternal cycle of shadows and light, hinting at a balanced vigilance. The king's life would never revert to its previous state, as their privacy had been compromised and their story had become intertwined with the community's tale. However, this transformation presented an opportunity to turn their ordeal into something meaningful, contributing to the creation of the world they envisioned. As evening descended upon Oakage Heights, Jallen ventured outside to shoot some hoops on the familiar driveway. The surroundings remained unchanged, yet a significant shift was palpable. Neighbors like Mrs. Whitaker and Mr. Peterson acknowledged him warmly, while children greeted him by name as they cycled past the house. There were no longer wary glances or suspicious gazes, just a newfound clarity in the way neighbors saw each other for the first time. Meanwhile, in the broader world beyond the tranquil suburban streets, Isaiah King's military connections remained vigilant from afar, not because of looming threats, but out of familial duty to watch, wait, and be prepared. It offered a glimpse into a concealed realm that many would never glimpse, raising questions about the lengths one would go to shield loved ones from injustice when the system fails. Through his actions, Isaiah King provided his response, urging others to ponder their stance on protecting their kin. Like and subscribe for more intriguing content. I am looking for additional narratives that delve into the darker realms where bravery intersects with repercussions.